Hello there, welcome to my channel. I'm Kelly from Silly Moon Quilting Co. Today we're going to be talking about stitch length and what's the right stitch length. Well, I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. There is no right stitch length. The stitch length that you like the best is the stitch length that is going to be right for your quilt tops. So we're going to talk about it on both our domestic and our long arm, with a stitch regulator, without a stitch regulator, and how to achieve those perfect stitches that you want on your quilt. So I hope you enjoy. So we're going to start with drop 2. Drop rulers, if you don't know, come in 3 different sizes. And just a quick overview of the drop, you'll notice that each drop has an engraved line on either side, and it says 45 degree by 8, 60 degree by 6. That means that we can use those lines on there to line up on the line we just stitched, which allows us to minimally mark our quilt prior to stitching, and helps us if we're working a lot in negative space throughout a quilt. So what we want to talk about today is stitch length and how it makes a difference. So I'm working on the Q16. We're going to do this on the domestic machine as well, but right now I'm working on the Q16. So it has a stitch regulator. So it tells, if whatever I set it at, stitches per inch, that's what it will do. But I'm going to show you different ways of changing that, and I'm going to show you why I changed that. So on my machine, I have the option of changing my stitches per inch. It defaults to 10. I'm going to lift my ruler foot. I've got my thread locked there. I'm going to slide my ruler in, always making sure that I'm nice and clear before I bring that ruler foot back down. And I'm going to slide that ruler back towards me. Now, I've got my machine defaulted at 10 stitches per inch, so I'm going to do one loop of this petal, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. And then we're going to change that a little bit and explain when you would want different stitch lengths, and that there is really no right or wrong stitch length, but we'll talk about some of the reasons why you might want a different stitch length. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this first drop. So that takes me back to where I started, and if you notice there, that's what 10 stitches per inch look like. Let's zoom in on that. So that's what our 10 stitches per inch look like. Now, you can absolutely do your entire quilt 10 stitches per inch. I tend to like a larger stitch, mainly because if I make a mistake, it's easier to pick out, but it does create such a beautiful stitch, 10 stitches per inch. So we're going to change it now on my machine, and I'm going to change it to 8 stitches per inch. So I'm just going to turn this up here. So on my machine face here, you'll see the stitches per inch. Default is 10. I'm going to bring that down to 8. And that's typically where I will do, especially if I'm practicing, I might even go down as far as 6. Because then I probably, if I go down as far as 6, then if I have to rip it out, it's really no big deal. Okay, so we've got our 10 stitches per inch. I've now switched my machine to 8. And I am going to just rotate my drop ruler, and that engraved line is going to sit right on top of the line I just stitched, which means I don't need to mark my quilt. You just want to really make sure you come into the center every single time. Let's do one more. So now I've got that. I'm going to just move that out of the way so you can see that there is a definite visual difference at the stitches per inch. Let's just for fun, I'm going to bring this down to 6 stitches per inch, and we'll see what that looks like. So I ended there. Now I'm just going to rotate one more time to get my next drop. my next drop. So I'm going to move that out of the way, and then I'm just going to turn that so I can zoom in there. So you can see there is a definite difference. There's a definite difference between those three sizes of stitches. Now, when would we want one versus the other? If I'm using a heavier thread, so if I'm using a 12 weight thread or something heavier, I am going to want to go with a larger stitch. It just creates a more harmonious look on your quilt. If I want to do something really fine and intricate, I'm going to go with a smaller stitch. That makes perfect sense. But it boils down to you have to choose what stitch length you like. It makes no difference. Nobody is going to measure your stitches to make sure that they're the right length. You want to choose a stitch length that works for you. As I said, I tend to kind of go in the middle here at about 8 stitches per inch. I kind of like that look. I think it works really well. Obviously, I'm using quite a bright contrasting thread on here. If you were using a thread that blended, it would be less noticeable, the difference between these three. So you can play with it. If you're on a machine that has a stitch regulator, play with it on a practice sandwich to determine what look you like. Now, it also will depend on what you're going to do in that block. So I'm just going to turn this here because I want to show you something else. So I ended here. So I've ended there. I'm going to do a rotation again. And again, that engraved line is just going right on top of the line I just stitched. So I know that my line is good. So what I want to do is I want to show you another reason. I'm going to bring this back up to 8 stitches per inch. And I'm going to show you another time that I would make my stitches smaller. So maybe go to the 10 stitches per inch. So when I'm going up here, I'm going to stop when I reach the peak. So there's an engraved line here that's the center. I'm going to just lift my ruler foot and slide that ruler out for a minute. So I'm now going to bring in my cheesy ruler, which is the circles, and I'm going to pick the 3/4 inch circle and I'm going to drop my ruler foot. So now I want to do a 3/4 inch circle in here. If I do my stitches really large, and we'll do that, we'll start at 6. I'll show you what that looks like. So sometimes when we do a larger stitch, it doesn't make it as defined, especially when you're going around a curve. And if you're doing an even smaller curve, so the smaller circle, you want to make sure you maybe do the smaller ones so they look a little more defined. That's really also going to play when you're working in a ruler such as square dance or hexie or anything where you have a sharp inside corner. You want to decrease your stitch length, keep it lower so that you get that extra nice sharp point in there. And we're going to do that on the domestic machine, but I just wanted to show you this on the long arm as well. So I'm going to lift my ruler foot. I'm going to slide that out of the way. I'm going to bring my drop back in, and now I know my drop where it needs to line up. I just need to line up this engraved line on top of the line I just stitched, and I know that I'm lined up perfectly on this side. And then I can come down to that point. So I've got a larger stitch here. So you can see on the one side, I've got my 10 stitches per inch. On the other side, I've got 6 stitches per inch. So it really is going to be a personal preference, but it also is going to depend on the size of the design that you're doing. So let's just play with this a little bit more. And I'm going to show you what I mean by doing an even smaller circle. So I'm going to bring this back up to 8 stitches per inch. And stop when I reach my center line. Lift that ruler foot again, bring that cheesy in, and do that little tiny 1/2 inch circle. And if I'm going to actually do it so that it's 10 stitches per inch. So I'm going to make it a smaller stitch length. And then I'll show you the difference between the two. So because I did a smaller circle compared to this circle, it's better that I do a smaller stitch so I don't end up with a pull in that corner, or in that round rather. So we'll just finish this up and make sure the whole thing is looped on top of the line I just stitched. And then back to my center, and then I can keep rotating. We might as well just finish this off so you can see what the full drop flower looks like. So that's 10 stitches per inch. The other thing I do want to mention is, even though this is not really what we're talking about today, if you're doing a design like this where you want the center to all come in and meet, make sure you've got a nice sharp needle when you're doing this. I've got lots of other videos about it. So I'm going to bring this even further down. Let's go down all the way to 4 stitches per inch. Now I do find when I do that, I want to go a little bit slower to make sure everything catches really well. But it almost can create like a sashiko type look. So I'm going to do one more, and I'm going to go on the high end on this one. And I'll show you what that looks like. So then we have a couple comparisons right side by side. You can hear it in the machine. I'm now at 16 stitches per inch. Goodness help me. Goodness help me if I ever have to take that out. But I'm going to move that ruler out of the way. And now you can really get a feel for the difference in stitch length and what it looks like. Again, it is a personal preference, but depending on the design that you're doing, there may be one that is better suited for the job that you're doing. So we're going to switch over now to the domestic machine, and we're going to talk about the same thing when you don't have a stitch regulator. Okay, so we're at the domestic machine. I'm on the B735 today. We're going to use wedgie because it's got some sharp corners here rather than drop, which we already saw on the long arm. Now, the thing is, when we're working on our domestic machine, we are the ones creating the stitch length. There is some machines that do have a stitch regulator that you can do with rulers, but most don't. So on this machine, of course, I want to drop my feed dogs. Then it doesn't matter what my stitch length is here because there's nothing pulling the material through with the feed dogs, and that's what's determining your stitch length when you put it up in your machine. So I can go ahead and just drop my feed dogs, and that's all I need to change here. I've got my thread locked, so I've pulled up my bobbin thread. I'm using the same pink thread just to kind of make it easier for you to see. I'm going to lift my ruler foot, of course, slide my ruler underneath, bring it back down, and then bring the ruler to me, and my foot nests right in there, just like drop. And we've also got the same engraved markings here where I can rotate the ruler. Just going to shut the light off on my machine, which is something I love about this machine. Just going to shut the light off so that it makes it not so reflective for you to see. Hopefully that's better. So shut off those lights that come right down on it. Hopefully that works okay for you to see. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch. Now, with a machine that doesn't have a stitch regulator, you are in control of that stitch length. So if I move my hands fast and my foot slow, my stitches are going to be larger. If I move my foot fast and my hands slow, I'm going to end up with a whole bunch of really tiny stitches. So we want to find that mid space. So what I always do is I always make sure that my machine is set at half speed. I find it gives me better control when I'm working with rulers. So whether you've got a minus and a plus or a tortoise and a hare, whatever you've got here, you kind of want to put your machine at half speed. And practice this on something other than your quilt, obviously. Again, I am one that tends to like a little bit bigger stitch, and you'll see that as I go along here, but I'm going to show you both. So I'm going to go where my foot is at a reasonable speed, and then my hands are going to go kind of a little slower, so we end up with some tighter stitches. Remember, versus when you have a machine that has a stitch regulator, the stitch regulator, your machine stops stitching when your hands aren't moving. But if you are using a machine on your domestic or a machine without your stitch regulator on, if you stop moving your hands, the needle's just going to keep going up and down in the same spot, and we don't want that. So I'm going to put down my pedal, and I'm going to go really slow with my hands, and my foot pedal is about halfway down. Now when I reach this corner, I want to take an extra stitch to make sure I'm locked, and then come back down the other way. So you can see those stitches. Move that out of the way and then zoom you in a little bit. You can see those stitches are really tiny. So I know then that I want to either speed my hand up a bit, or I want to slow down the amount of or put less pressure on the gas pedal. So let's try it with just slowing down our hands about the same speed of stitching. Again, I've got my line markings on the ruler. I'm only going to do 6 this time, so I'm going to go this direction, and that's going to go on top of the line I just stitched. And I'm going to speed up my hand a bit, but I'm going to keep my foot at about the same spot. Again, taking that extra stitch in that corner so it goes around the corner. And you can see there, that is a much larger stitch. So practice on something different, just a practice quilt sandwich. Practice on a quilt sandwich to see which you like better, and kind of try to find that rhythm of what works better for you. So I've done 2 now, and essentially you're just going to play with the stitch length until you find something you're happy with. And the design and the idea with your stitch length on your domestic machine or on your long arm without a stitch regulator is to create a consistent stitch. What we don't want to do is we don't want to have stitches that are this size and then stitches that are this size. That looks obvious. If we kind of pick one size and they're all the same, then that's fine. Nobody's going to come and look and go, well, you're using a 2.0 instead of a 2.5. It's not ever going to happen. So we want to just make sure that we are maintaining that consistency as we do our design. Now, the other thing we can do is, here I'm obviously using a bright contrasting thread. If you were to use a thread that blends, so in this case, if I were to use purple, it would be less obvious the actual stitches that I'm using here. So you could easily get away with it if your stitches aren't quite so consistent. So let's try another one. I'm going to rotate that again so that that's on top of the line I just stitched. And I'm going to go a little bit slower this time, and you can absolutely go slower when you do this. So I'm going to go slow with my hands and slow with my feet. So you don't have to go fast. You can just go whatever pace you feel is the best for you, and keeping an eye on your stitches to again create that consistency. So I'm going at a nice slow pace so I can still maintain good control of that ruler. What I want to do is get in that corner, take an extra stitch so that we end up with a nice sharp corner. And then back down to the center again. And again, it is just playing with it until you find one that works for you. So that's a fairly decent one, fairly consistent with that one, but the speed was slower, and that's okay. So now I'm going to try one more where my hands are moving a little faster, but my foot's moving really slow. So I'll move that out of the way. I shall lift it right out of the way. And then you can get a really good feel for the difference in those stitches. So that's where my hand is going a little bit faster, so it's creating a larger gap between each stitch. And this is where my foot is going fast. So you just kind of want to play with it to kind of see what works for you. So what we're aiming for is consistency. So I'm going to try and do this one here, and I'm going to kind of speed it up a little bit, stopping in that corner. And again, you want to make sure that when you do that corner, I'm just going to turn that so you can see, when I do my corner, anytime there's an inside corner like that, you want to take that extra stitch. Now, if I was doing a really large stitch, so much larger than this, and I didn't take that extra stitch in the corner, this would actually pull around. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to do a larger stitch. So my hand's going a little faster, and then if I don't stop in that corner, I'm trained to do it, I'll show you what that looks like. So if you notice here, hopefully you can see that, coming around this corner, it's not a nice sharp corner like I have over here. It kind of, the stitch itself goes at an angle. So we really want to be wary of that when we are doing our stitches anytime we've got sort of the inside of a design. I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that you learned some new things about stitch length, and that it really doesn't matter. You want to do whatever stitch length you are happy with. The end result is, when you look at the quilt top, are you happy with it? And of course, thread color can play a huge role, and weight of thread, but we've talked about all of that before. So now let's get to the fun stuff. So as always, we have a word of the week, and this word of the week is going to be thread. I think that that's an appropriate word of the week. So what you want to do is you want to comment down below, use the word thread in a sentence. I will announce the winner of a $20 gift certificate for anything on my website. So the other fun part is that we didn't announce a winner last week, so we've got 2 to announce this week. So there's 2 names that I'm going to comment here, and if you too can contact me at sillymoonquiltingco@gmail.com. I'll put the email address down below in case you missed it. If you send me an email and just let me know that you were the winner, I will make sure you get your $20 gift certificate. So the first one is Gretchen Bryant, 9081. You're a winner. And the second person is Tiffany Turcott, 1470. So both of you have won a $20 gift certificate for anything on my website. If you go ahead and fire me an email, and the email address again is down below, I will make sure that you get your $20 gift certificate. So thank you all so very much for joining me. I did some interesting stats the other day and found out that only 31% of you are actual subscribers. So if you could really hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. It would help me out a lot. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.